It is my pleasure to welcome you to the University of Chicago and to the International House. Before we get started, I just want to outline today's program. There will be a brief introduction followed by a 1-hour presentation. After our presentation, participants will have the opportunity to come up during a brief question and answer session. If you would like to do that, please make an orderly line at the microphone in the middle aisle. Remember to keep your answers brief, as we'd like to have as many participants as possible. After question and answer, we will also have a book signing. So if you purchase a book today from the Co-op Seminary, please form a line as well, and you're more than welcome to come up and have it signed. My name is Jaime Garcia, and I'm the Manager of Student Enrichment at the Collegiate Scholars Program. The Collegiate Scholars Program is a 3-year program that aims to prepare talented Chicago public school students for admission and success at the nation's top universities. CSP is shaped around a core curriculum of humanities, social science, math, and science courses. All courses taught during the summer months by University of Chicago faculty and PhD candidates. In addition, CSP offers enrichment activities geared toward college readiness, cultural awareness, and civic engagement during the academic year. Activities much like tonight's event. This lecture is also brought to you by the International House Global Voices Performing Arts and Lecture Series. International House was founded in 1932 through a gift of John D. Rockefeller Jr. as a coeducational residence and program center for students from around the world and the citizens of Chicago. Whether it's a world music or dance performance, lecture, conference, or film festival, International House presents public programming that advances cross-cultural understanding and opportunities for civic discourse on community, national, and world affairs. The Global Voices Author Night Series is a popular public book series organized as a collaborative project with International House and the Seminary Co-op bookstores. Tonight's program is also co-sponsored with the Office of Civic Engagement's Collegiate Scholars Program. I hope all of you will return to International House throughout the coming months and years to attend our public lecture series and performances. You can find information about these programs on the literature table by the front entrance, and you can sign up for an electronic events calendar. I am very pleased to introduce to you tonight's guest. For the first time in history, the secrets of the living brain are being revealed by a battery of high-tech brain scans devised by physicists. Now what was once solely the province of science fiction has become a startling reality. Recording memories, telepathy, videotaping our dreams, mind control, avatars, and telekinesis are not only possible, they already exist. The future of the mind gives us an authoritative and compelling look at the astonishing research being done in top laboratories around the world, all based on the latest advancements in neuroscience and physics. One day we might have a smart pill that can enhance our cognition, be able to upload our brain to a computer, neuron for neuron, send thoughts and emotions around the world on a brain net, control computers and robots with our mind, push the very limits of immortality, and perhaps even send our consciousness across the universe. Dr. Kaku takes us on a grand tour of what the future might hold, giving us not only a solid sense of how the brain functions, but also how these technologies will change our daily lives. He even presents a radically new way to think about consciousness and applies it to provide fresh insight into mental illness, artificial intelligence, and alien consciousness. Dr. Kaku's deep understanding of modern science and keen eye for future developments, the future of the mind is a scientific tour de force, an extraordinary, mind-boggling exploration of the frontiers in neuroscience. And Future of the Mind just hit number 6 on Amazon, so definitely want to make sure we mention that. So it's a great accomplishment. Dr. Michio Kaku is the co-creator of string theory, a branch of string theory. He received a B.S. summa cum laude from Harvard University in 1968, where he came first in his physics class. He went on to the Berkeley Radiation Laboratory at the University of California, Berkeley, and received a PhD in 1972. In 1973, he held a lectureship at Princeton University. He is the author of several scholarly PhD-level textbooks and has had more than 70 articles published in physics journals covering topics such as superstring theory, supergravity, supersymmetry, and hadronic physics. Just recently, New York Magazine named him one of the 100 smartest people in New York. So without further ado, if you'd please help me welcome our tonight's guest, Dr. Michio Kaku.
Well, after such a great introduction, I can't wait to hear the speaker myself. I have a confession to make. New York Magazine voted me as one of the 100 smartest people. However, in all fairness, I have to admit that Madonna also made that same list. And next year, they tell me that Lady Gaga is going to push me off the list entirely. Now, I'm a physicist. And you may say, well, what does a physicist do anyway? How does it differ from chemistry? Well, we physicists, we invented the transistor. We invented the laser. We constructed the internet. We wrote the World Wide Web. And also, along the way, we invented television. We invented radio, microwaves, radar. We created the space program. We created the GPS system. And we love to make predictions. When we helped to build the internet, one physicist predicted that the internet would become a forum of high culture, high art, and high society. Well, today we know that 5% of the internet is pornography. But that's because teenage boys log on to the internet. Just wait until the grandmas and grandpas log on to the internet. Then 50% of the internet will be pornography. And some people say, well, what is the difference between engineering, physics, chemistry? Let me tell you a short story. During World War II, the Nazis once captured a bunch of American scientists and called them spies. Well, there was a geologist, a physicist, and a chemist. And they were lined up in front of the firing squad. Well, all of a sudden, the geologist said, "Earthquake! Earthquake!" And there was chaos. Everyone scrambled for cover. Meanwhile, the geologist snuck away and escaped. Well, after people realized there was no earthquake, they got together and put the physicists and the chemists up against the firing squad. And then the physicist said, "Lightning! Lightning!" And everyone scattered, wondering where are the lightning bolts coming. And once again, the physicist snuck off. Now there was just the chemists. The firing squad was ready. And what did the chemist say? He said, "Fire! Fire!" That's why we don't have that many chemists now. But today, I'm going to talk about the greatest mystery of all science. One is, of course, the origin of the universe. And that's what I work on professionally. I work on what is called string theory, which we hope will allow us to, quote, read the mind of God. But there's also another mystery, and that mystery sits on your shoulders. It weighs 3 pounds. It consumes 20 watts of power. But to duplicate the human brain with a computer, you can calculate that a computer would have to be the size of a city block. A city block worth of supercomputers, energized by a nuclear power plant, cooled down by a river. And yet your brain does it with only 20 watts of power. So when someone calls you a dim bulb, that's a compliment. And how much energy does it take to keep your brain going? Oh, a hamburger. And to cool it down, maybe a Coke. And yet it is the most complex object in the known universe. You have to go 24 trillion miles to find an object as complex as the human brain. So let's now talk about the brain, but put it in context. This is my last book that I talked about right here, Physics of the Future. It sailed on to the New York Times bestseller list. For me, it was gratifying because the word physics never gets on the New York Times bestseller list. Never. In fact, I did it twice. Physics of the impossible takes you not 100 years into the future, but 500 years into the future, where we physicists can dream of starships, teleportation, anti-gravity, talking about the universe 500 years from now, or you might even have time machines. And in this book, I asked the question, what happens if you go backwards in time and meet your teenage mother before you're born, and she falls in love with you? Well, if your teenage mother falls in love with you before you're born, you're in deep doo-doo if that happens. But today, I'm going to talk about the other great mystery of the universe. What sits on your shoulders? The most complex object known to science. Not the Big Bang, which is so distant, so removed, we can't touch it, but something as close as your nearest thought. We're going to talk about why do we think? What is intelligence? Is it possible to photograph a dream? You know, when I was a kid, I was fascinated by science fiction. I used to watch Flash Gordon on TV every weekend. And I used to do experiments, telepathy, reading minds, telekinesis, moving objects with the mind. I tried real hard to do that, and I failed. So I came to the conclusion that maybe, just maybe, telepaths do walk the surface of the earth, but I wasn't one of them. So today we realize that physics has unlocked the secret of the DNA molecule. It was physicists who said that the DNA molecule should be probed with X-rays. Now we can read the DNA. Now we physicists are turning our attention to what sits on our shoulders. We are mapping the brain. President Barack Obama, President of the United States, last year announced the Brain Initiative. Along with the European Union, $1 billion are being allocated today, not tomorrow, today, to create a map of the brain, just like the Human Genome Project created a map of our genome. How much does it cost to have a complete map of our genome today? It costs about $1,000. In fact, BBC Television took some of my blood and sent it down to Vanderbilt University in Texas, and they gave me a CD-ROM with almost all my genes on it. This is a blueprint to create me. Next, we're talking about mapping the mind itself. One day we'll have another disc, a disc with your memories, your emotions on it. And even after you die, you will become, in some sense, immortal. It will live on even after you're gone. So let's talk about it. When I was a kid, I used to try to beam my thoughts into other people. I used to try to read other people's minds. And I came to the conclusion, it's all bunk. You can't do it. I'm a physicist now. Now I realize the brain is a milliwatt transmitter. We do emit radiation, but it's very faint. Now we have supercomputers. We have MRI machines. And now we can begin to decode the messages from the brain. So telepathy is one of the great devices of science fiction. Now we can do it. We can actually read minds. And in the Matrix, uploading memories was considered fantastic. Think about it, pushing the play button and become a gung fu master overnight. And in the Matrix, reality itself was a dream. Reality itself was a fiction. Can that be possible? Well, let me ask you a question. Late at night, when you're all alone and it's quiet late at night, have you ever had the feeling, just briefly, the feeling that maybe you're the only one in the universe? Maybe reality is a fiction. Maybe you were put on the earth to see whether you're smart enough to figure out that everything is a fiction. It's all imaginary. You are the only one in the universe. Ever had that feeling? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you ever had that feeling. You guys are crazy. You guys are nuts. You think you're the only one in the universe? That's ridiculous. I'm the only one in the universe. You're just a fiction of the hamburger I had last night. It's all a dream uploaded into my memory. I'm the only one around. Well, let's talk about this. Can you upload memories? The answer is yes. The first memory, as I mentioned in my book, was uploaded into a mouse last year. And the goal of this is to one day create a brain pacemaker for people with Alzheimer's syndrome. We have a definite goal. Alzheimer's is when the memory decays. We are going to record simple memories and put it into the brains of Alzheimer's patients. And beyond that, maybe we'll have a memory that you never had before, a memory of vacation. You'll have vacations. And how many courses did you flunk in college? Maybe you'll have a chance to push the play button and relearn those courses that you flunked when you were in college. And of course, uploading memories has consequences. This is the former governor of California having memories uploaded into his mind, vacations, even a marriage. His marriage was uploaded into his mind, and it was totally fake. Can you imagine one day waking up, sitting next to Sharon Stone, and realizing it's all a dream? Is that possible? And then, what happens if you can connect the mind to an exoskeleton? The military is dumping millions of dollars, and you'll see this in today's slideshow, connecting the human mind to an exoskeleton. Scientists at Duke University, for the next soccer World Cup, want to take a person who's totally paralyzed, a vegetable, spends all his life in a wheelchair, drooling, hook him up to an exoskeleton, and have him initiate the World Cup ceremony in Brazil. That's the next goal. And what about putting our mind into a robot? This is the movie Surrogates, starring Bruce Willis. This could be the future of the space program. Why send astronauts into outer space where it's dangerous and costly? Why not send robots, drones, connected mentally to an astronaut sitting in his living room? NASA is looking at this. And then telekinesis, the ability to move objects with the mind. This is Carrie, and if you read the book or saw the movie, she gets back at all the people who made fun of her at the senior prom by destroying the entire high school. What's the lesson here? The lesson here is never take a telekinetic to the senior prom. Okay? And my favorite movie, my favorite science fiction movie is Forbidden Planet, where there is a super advanced race that one day creates the ultimate machine. Anything you can think of becomes reality, the ultimate machine. But when this alien race turns on their machine, they disappear, vanish without a trace, at the height of their technological glory. And at the end of the movie, they finally reveal what killed this advanced civilization. You see, when they turned on that machine, anything they can think of would become reality. Then that night, they went to sleep. They had nightmares. Every nightmare came true. All the hurts, wrongs, slights, and the whole race committed suicide that night. What's the lesson here? The lesson here is if you ever become a god, don't fall asleep. And is it possible to live on after you die? Yes, Hollywood has considered that too. If you saw the latest Superman movie, everybody knows that Superman's father died when Krypton blew up. That's part of the Superman myth. But the latest Superman movie had a twist. And that is Superman's father, Russell Crowe, had his memory and personality put on a disc so he can live on as a computer program. And so Superman has a very nice conversation with his father, even after his father had died. One day, perhaps your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandkids will have a conversation with you because you are immortal. Your personality, your wants, desires, your quirks are all encoded on a disc. And in Star Trek, consciousness without a body. Is this the way to explore outer space? Science fiction writers like Asimov dreamed about the ultimate way to explore the universe. Put consciousness on a laser beam and send the laser beam into outer space. Consciousness expanding at the speed of light. Is that possible? Well, 5 years ago, I would have been considered nuts to say that. But we now think it is possible. This could be the ultimate destiny of the human race, to explore the universe at the speed of light. But let's get back to Earth now. That's Hollywood. Now let's talk about the real thing. We now have, because of physics, the ability to see energy flow inside the living brain. For example, on the left, you see the brain when it tells the truth. When the brain tells the truth, not much happens. But on the right is when the brain tells a lie. You see, when you tell a lie, first you have to know the truth. Second, you have to create the lie. Third, you have to calculate the consistency of the lie with all the other lies you've been telling all these years. That's a lot of brain power. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. So your brain, believe it or not, has evolved with time, and it's a museum. Believe it or not, your brain is a museum of life on Earth. The back of the brain, right here, if you have an injury to the back of the brain, that's the reptilian brain. That's the brain of reptiles. If you have a car accident and you injure this part of the brain, you lose balance, the sense of territoriality, appetite. Things that reptiles feel at the very back is called the reptilian brain. Then the center of the brain is the monkey brain. Emotions are there, memories, especially emotions, because monkeys are social animals. That's the monkey brain at the very center in blue. That's called the old mammalian or the monkey brain. And then to the front is the thinking brain, the cerebral cortex. And when we analyze living people, we find some astonishing things. Certain mythologies, certain old wives' tales are actually true. Every parent knows that teenagers suffer from brain damage. We all know that. Just talk to your teenage kids at night. It's true. You can actually see with brain scans that the frontal cortex of teenagers is not fully developed. And that's why they really do suffer from brain damage. And it's another old wives' tale that when a man talks to a pretty girl, he becomes stupid. Yes, you can prove that under a brain scan. You can actually see that blood drains. Blood drains from the prefrontal cortex. Men really do become stupid talking to pretty girls, especially Monica Lewinsky. You can see that with these brain scans. This is absolutely amazing. The lore, all the lore, the anecdotes we've told each other for thousands of years, you can actually see that on brain scans. And if you were to slice the brain horizontally, and then touch the brain with electrodes, different parts of your body will move when you touch the brain electrically. And so you get a map called the Penfield map, a map of the brain as it controls the body. And of course, much of it is your mouth, because eating is very important for us. Your fingertips. Look at how big your fingertips are, because that's where most of your attention is. Eyesight, fingertips, and mouth. Most of your brain is devoted to that. If I had a dolphin and hooked up a dolphin to this, I would find that the ear, the sonar, would be very, very large. A dog would have a totally different Penfield diagram, because dogs deal with smells. The nose would be extremely big on the Penfield diagram, because dogs live in a world of smells. And then at the very center is your pleasure center. You can take a mouse, hook electrodes to the mouse's brain so it hits the pleasure center, and connect the wire to a telegraph key. So the mouse, by touching the telegraph key, can excite himself. When you do this experiment, the mouse will hit the key 2 times a second until he dies of starvation. He will do this until he dies. So we go up the scale. We've done it to dogs, cats. We even hooked up a dolphin. A dolphin's pleasure center was hooked up so that when he went forward with his beak would excite an electrode and he would start to feel pleasure. What happened? Well, the dolphin hit the thing twice a second for days on end, until the dolphin finally realized, I am dying. I am dying of starvation. So the dolphin will go out, eat, and then come back and hit himself again. That dolphin's not stupid. Okay? And this has actually been done on humans as well. Okay? So, in the old days, we used to put on these clumsy helmets called EEG sensors. Each thing is like a radio transmitter. It picks up slight impulses from the brain. And we didn't have supercomputers back then, so it was like a toy. It was sort of like a toy. It looked really neat, but it was kind of useless. Now we have computers. We can analyze the signals coming from the brain, and now it's sexy to be hooked up mentally. On the upper left, video games can now be played mentally. On the upper right, in Japan, you put on a headband with 2 ears. The headband picks up radio. And so when you talk to somebody interesting at a party, your ears go right up. And then when you talk to a real boring dud, the ears go, ew. So at parties now, you know exactly who's interested in you and exactly who's bored stiff talking to you, even if they're polite and don't say anything. So in the future, you'll know exactly whether or not you're going to go home alone at night. You'll know if you're the hit of the party or whether people are just snickering behind your back. This is the rage of Japan. Just think of that. Professors will have all their students put on these headbands, and your things better light up. Once your thing starts to go like that, F, 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 for you students in the audience. And in the lower left, Apple computers. Apple computers is now thinking about how can the human mind energize laptop computers, energize your TV set, the lights, the thermostats. In the future, when you walk into a room, you'll simply mentally call for your car, which drives itself, turn on the lights, turn on the TV set, no mouse, and do dictation. Do dictation mentally. This is being looked at by Apple computers. And then it's going to be sexy. Fashion models. All of a sudden, it'll be fashionable to be hooked up mentally without any mouse, without using your fingertips or taking dictation. It'll be sexy to do this, and very practical. This is my colleague, Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking used to communicate with his fingertips. He used to use his fingertips to control a mouse on a laptop. He has now lost control of his fingertips. All he can do is blink. That's all he can do. That's a very painful way to communicate with the outside world. So what do? Hey, we're physicists, right? On his right glass, look at his right glass very carefully. There's a chip. We put a chip in his right glass, hook that chip up to a laptop. He mentally controls that chip, which then types on the laptop computer. Here's somebody who is totally paralyzed, a mind in a trapped body, and yet he can communicate with the world. Not only that, but we can now make him walk. This is called BMI, brain-machine interface. On the right, you see a chip put right on top of a person's brain. It's a painless operation, by the way. The brain has no pain sensors. You can remove half the skull, and you don't feel a thing, because the brain cannot feel pain. So you put a tiny chip, about the size of a dime, on his skull, hook it to a laptop computer, and you give the gift of mobility. This man is a vegetable. He had a massive stroke. He cannot communicate with his loved ones. They simply come and stroke his arms and go home. He's a vegetable. Well, at Brown University, they hooked him up to a laptop. He can now surf the web, read email, write email, play video games, operate his wheelchair, operate household appliances, and he is totally paralyzed. Now, the military is interested in this. Think of all the veterans of the Iraq-Afghan war who have lost arms and legs. This woman here had problems with her brain many decades ago. She is a vegetable. They hooked her mind up to a mechanical arm. She can now actually sip Coca-Cola, And when she communicates, she does it by blinking. It's a very painful way to communicate, but she's totally paralyzed. She blinks and spells out the letters of the alphabet. Very painful. And when she was hooked up, she loved it. And what did she blink? She blinked that she would love to have mechanical feet as well as arms. That is coming. The military is now spending millions of dollars on a program called Revolutionary Prosthetics. This man is a veteran. He's lost his arm, probably due to a roadside bomb. These arms have the sensitivity of a normal arm. You can handshake. You can fist bump. You can high five with these. And next is not only devices that allow you to pick up an egg with that kind of sensitivity, but also a complete exoskeleton. What are we talking about? We're talking about Iron Man. An exoskeleton with even superpowers. An exoskeleton that will give the gift of life, perhaps, to Stephen Hawking. Think about it. The ability to have the dexterity to use a pen, to walk. And like I said, in the next World Cup soccer games in Brazil, the person who ignites and sets off the soccer games may be a quadriplegic with an exoskeleton. And this means that a human can operate a robot. This is Japan. In Japan, we have Asimo, one of the world's most advanced robots. Asimo can run, he can walk, he can climb up stairs. Asimo can dance. He dances much better than I do. I've been on a number of science specials with Asimo. He outdances me every time. You can now put a worker with an EEG sensor, connect him to Asimo, and he is a surrogate, just like in the movie Avatar, just like in the movie Surrogates. This could be the future of the fire department. In very nasty fires, why do we have to send humans? Why not send a surrogate who is superhuman, guided by a fireman? This could be the future of the space program. It's very costly putting something into outer space because of life support. You know, it takes $10,000 to put a pound of anything in near Earth orbit. That is your weight in gold. Think of your body made out of solid gold, and that's what it costs to put you in near Earth orbit. To put you on the moon costs about $100,000 a pound. To put you on Mars is about $1 million a pound to put you on Mars. That is the cost of diamonds. Why? Because life support is so precious and expensive. Why not send robots into outer space? Robots are strong. They don't bellyache. They don't complain. They don't go on strike. And they don't come back. This is great for the space program. And this could be the future of the classroom of the future. In other words, we all know what you do when you don't feel like going to school. You play hooky, right? Come on, fess up. Play hooky, right? Well, in the future, you will have a surrogate. You will mentally be in contact with the surrogate when you are sick. The teacher sees your face inside the surrogate, knows that you're paying attention. You see the teacher's face in your surrogate from your bed. In the future, you will never be able to play hooky again. Isn't the future wonderful? Surrogates in the classroom. And then people ask the question, well, you know, the eye is an extension of the brain. Believe it or not, the eye is a direct extension of the brain. Why not input information directly into the eye, the brain, via contact lenses? This is the future of the internet. The future of the internet is to get into your contact lens. You will blink and you will be online. And who's the first people to buy internet contact lenses? College students taking final examinations. They will blink and they will see all the answers right there in the contact lens. And who's the next person to buy internet contact lenses? President Barack Obama. So he doesn't have to have these damn teleprompters in front of him giving him his speech. And who's the third person to buy internet contact lenses? Vice President Joe Biden. So he never says anything goofy anymore. He will always be on message. Actors, actresses will always be on message. And think of this. If you're a clumsy, tongue-tied Romeo, you will have poetry coming out of your mouth the next time you're on a date. Your date will be so impressed. You are so elegant, so romantic, because you can read your contact lens. And even husband and wives will have their contact lenses connected. How many husbands or wives go shopping and buy the wrong thing? Next time the wife will say, I can see it through your contact lens. No, that apple's rotten. Don't buy that. No, don't buy this celery. Just think of what you can do when you have a brain net. What's coming after this? A brain net. Emotions, sensations will be sent on the internet. Can you imagine teenagers? Teenagers on Facebook sending emotions to each other? This would be incredible. If somebody wins a gold medal at the Olympics, they can email the emotion of winning the Olympics right on BrainNet. And this will revolutionize the movies. The movies haven't changed for 50 years. For 50 years, the movies have been flat with sound. That's it. That's the movies. In the future, you will have movies with emotions and sensations on them. And as I said before, surrogates will go into outer space, become firemen, construction workers, dull, dirty, dangerous, the 3 Ds. Dull, dirty, dangerous jobs could be done by surrogates. So surrogates may allow us to explore outer space, to do dangerous jobs, because the mind controls the surrogate. And now, let's talk about uploading a memory. This has been a dream for years, to upload a memory, and now we can do it. Last year at Wake Forest University and also USC in Los Angeles, they took a mouse, it's a very humble memory, they recorded the memory of the mouse drinking some water. At the very center of the brain is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is your memory center. That's where short-term memories are turned into long-term memories. They recorded the image, the sensation of sipping water. Then the mouse forgot the task later, and then they reinserted on the right. They reinserted the memory into the hippocampus, and boom, the mouse remembered. Now at MIT, they actually inserted a false memory into a mouse. In other words, a movie of a vacation. Let's say that you've always wanted to go to Paris, but never had the time. No problem. There's a memory here that says Paris. You can insert it and have a vacation that you never had before. On the upper right is the brain pacemaker. It is a pacemaker that can record and reinsert a memory into the hippocampus. Now, if the hippocampus is destroyed or injured, you cannot form long-term memories. There's a very sad case of a gentleman decades ago who had an operation right here, and they accidentally cut his hippocampus. He lost the ability to form a memory. When you greeted him, he would say, hi, how are you? And then he would forget, and then he would say, hi, how are you? You saw the movie 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore? That's based on a true story. A true story. Ever seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray? That too was based on a true story. Having to relive that moment over and over and over again. And in fact, it's very sad. This gentleman had this operation when he was about 20 years old. Decades later, he became old. And he would look at himself in the mirror, and he'd be horrified to see that he wasn't young. He was an old man. And then he would forget the fact that he looked in a mirror, and then he would say, hi, how are you? He would even forget what he looked like. Well, we can now cure that, we think, with an artificial pacemaker to insert memories into the mind. Now, this has enormous implications. Think of how many courses you flunked in college. Think of all the courses you would like to take but never had the chance. You can learn karate. You can learn new skills. This could change the workforce. The workforce changes when new technology comes in and workers are thrown out of work. They may be able to learn new skills this way. And next, if that isn't enough, can you videotape a dream? This was once considered preposterous. Dreams? What are dreams after all? Well, get this. This is done at the University of California at Berkeley. First, they MRI scan the brain, shown left, and they can do it with very small MRI machines. On the right is the world's smallest MRI machine. It is the size of a briefcase. And how small can you build an MRI machine? We physicists calculate, using Maxwell's equations, that the smallest MRI machine you can build is this big. You will have an MRI machine in your medicine cabinet. You will have more power in your medicine cabinet than the University of Chicago Hospital. We're talking about MRI scans that you can do by yourself at night. And what do you do with this? You take the MRI scan on the left, convert it into 30,000 dots, have a computer analyze these 30,000 dots, and then print out a picture. These are some of the first pictures ever taken of a thought. On the left is Steve Martin. If we were to dim the lights, you'd see that it is Steve Martin. And then next to it is the image as seen through a computer. Not bad. It's fuzzy, but you can clearly see that it is a human with eyes, nose, and this is what animals look like. On the left is an elephant. On the right is a computer reconstruction. On the left is an airplane. And from this, you can take images of the mind and create videotapes. Now what happens if you go to sleep? If you go to sleep, the machine will keep on chugging away and print out the first images of your dreams. Not only that, but we've now proven another old wives' tale. An old wives' tale consists of lucid dreaming. These are people who are conscious while they are dreaming. They actually know they are dreaming when they are dreaming. They can actually move and change the dream. In fact, how many people here in this room, when they dream, sometimes know they are dreaming? Raise your hand. Well, there you go. Lucid dreaming was tested last year at Max Planck Institute in Germany, and it's true. Lucid dreaming is not a fiction. It is possible to actually move in a dream. Now what happens if you put that dream on a PC screen? Then you're talking about something right out of the movie of Leonardo DiCaprio, Inception. The ability to actually alter the course of dreams. This is amazing. Then, why is President Barack Obama about to dump hundreds of millions of dollars into the Brain Project? The first payoff is to understand mental illness. You realize that about 5% of the population is rather severely mentally ill. If you don't believe me, go outside. Go outside, you see people talking to themselves. Go to the jails. The jails are full of people who talk to themselves. Many of these people have schizophrenia when you talk to yourself. Scientists have brain scanned these people. When you talk to yourself normally, the left part of your brain talks and generates speech. That's how you talk to yourself. However, for these people are unaware of the fact that they are talking to themselves. The front part of the brain, which is you, does not talk to the left part of the brain, which generates a voice. Therefore, these people think they're talking to Martians. They're talking to God. They're talking to whatever they think. Actually, they're talking to themselves. And we see that now with brain scans. And bipolar disorder. You'd be shocked. Many of your favorite actors and actresses, your favorite musicians, suffer from bipolar disorder. On the upper left is Lois Lane from Superman. She made headlines just a few years ago when Lois Lane was found stark naked in a junkyard hiding behind trash cans. She suffers from bipolar disorder, as well as Princess Leia from Star Wars, as well as the actors from Gone with the Wind. Many of your favorite actors, actresses, composers suffer from bipolar syndrome, where you alternate between depression and elation. And then, we scientists are now re-examining history. We find that if you go to a mental hospital, and some patients suffer from strokes, again, to the left part of their brain, and they have epileptic lesions, many of them suffer from hyper-religiosity. They are super religious. All of a sudden, they see demons, spirits behind everything. If it rains, it's because God is angry at us. Everything has a motive because of spirits. We think Joan of Arc suffered from hyper-religiosity. We think that she suffered from epileptic lesions, and as a consequence, thought she was talking to God. In fact, there's one theory that says that many of the prophets of many religions suffer from hyper-religiosity. In fact, there is a helmet, the God helmet, that you could put on your head, which beams radio to the left temporal lobe and makes you religious. It's amazing. It makes you feel as if you're in the presence of God, talking to God. Think about it. There's a part of the brain that does this. Well, they got a bunch of nuns, and they put the nuns in the God helmet, and they asked the nuns, does this shake your belief in God, that we can induce the feeling of religiousness by using electromagnetic radio waves? And the nuns said, no, because God created us with a radio that gives us a direct telephone hookup to God. God meant it to be that way. And then they hooked up an atheist, Richard Dawkins of Oxford University. He's a diehard atheist. They put him in the God helmet, and they asked this atheist, are you a believer now? Don't you feel in the presence of God? And he said, no. So it depends. And now let's talk about savants. We physicists have been fascinated by certain figures in history. Scientists with incredible abilities far beyond anything of a normal person. This guy on the left can take a helicopter ride over New York Harbor, one helicopter ride, and draw the entire panorama of Manhattan. He did it for London. He did it for Hong Kong. And it's now on display at JFK Airport. The next time you land at the international terminal at JFK Airport, do something you've never done before. Look up. Look up. Most people spend their whole life looking down. Look up, and you'll see this incredible mural painted by this guy after seeing Manhattan once. How does this happen? It turns out that some of these individuals had injury, again, to the left part of their brain. One person had a bullet that went through the left part of his brain as a child. Another person dived into a swimming pool, hit his head on the bottom of the swimming pool, and then both of them became super geniuses in mathematics. Now, after today's lecture, do not get a hammer and hit yourself in the left part of your brain hoping to pass that calculus exam tomorrow, okay? It don't work that way. It's a miracle, but it's happened several times in history. We've documented, we've brain scanned these people. We now realize that photographic memory is possible. You can talk to these people and say, what did you do 30 years ago on May 2nd at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? What were you doing? And they'll say, well, I was reading a novel. I was on page 320. You want me to read the page that I was looking at? Incredible memory. We brain scanned these people. And we think the following. There are many theories. One theory that I prefer is, we now realize that the brain records, but the brain also erases. We used to think that the brain naturally erases memory by attrition. It just wears off and rusts. No. Memories have to be erased. We now realize that for these people, the erase mechanism is broken. They have forgotten how to forget. And that's why they can tell you what they were doing 30 years ago on April 2nd at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, some of us don't even know what we were doing yesterday. These guys can go back 30 years. And some of the greatest geniuses of all time had Asperger's. This is Isaac Newton. He was not a pleasant person. He is the greatest scientist who ever lived. Even Einstein said so. You would not want to invite Isaac Newton for dinner. He'd make a horrible dinner conversationalist. But many Nobel Prize winners were like that. In fact, if you want to see people who have Asperger's syndrome, watch The Big Bang Theory on CBS television. Classic Asperger's syndrome. Clueless with women. Doormats on a date with when you date a pretty girl. Well, welcome to the world of genius. Believe it or not, Albert Einstein's brain is still with us. The pathologist who performed the autopsy on Albert Einstein in 1955 swiped Einstein's brain. He kept it in a jar in his living room for about 30 years. He drove across country with Einstein's brain in a mayonnaise jar, and we finally have it back at Princeton. It's now sitting in Princeton Hospital, and we've analyzed his brain. And now we could even analyze Freudian psychology. Freud was popular in the last century. Then people laughed at him for many, many decades. Now Freudian psychiatry is coming back a little bit because you can actually see things that he predicted that could not be seen 10 years ago. We've learned more about the brain in the last 10 years than in all of human history combined. That's how much we've learned. Freud said that the brain consists of the ego, superego, and the id. The ego is you. Your superego is your guilty conscience, and your id is your desire. Well, believe it or not, we can actually see 3 parts of the brain light up when you have a chocolate cake. When you see a chocolate cake, boom, your pleasure center lights up. That's the id. At the very center of the brain, that's your libido. We found it. And then your superego says, calories, heart attacks, if you eat that. That's your orbital frontal cortex, right behind your eyes. That is your guilty conscience. And then you have your ego, which is right behind your forehead. So if you want to know, where are you anyway? Where are you? You are right behind your forehead. That's where you are. And then consciousness. I'm running out of time, so let me just summarize that. I have a new theory of consciousness. There have been 20,000 articles written on consciousness by philosophers, psychiatrists, and psychologists, and all of them are worthless. Never have so many written so much to produce so little. Well, maybe my theory is bunk too, but I numerically rank consciousness. For example, I say that the lowest level of consciousness is a thermostat. 1 unit of consciousness because it measures temperature. Flowers may have 10 units because it measures rainfall, humidity, moisture, sunlight, the direction of gravity. So even flowers are conscious. I don't think you should talk to them, but I think that flowers have some consciousness. Then reptiles, the reptilian brain in the back. The reptilian brain is the lowest level of consciousness. It understands its location in space. It understands where the prey is and where it is located. Then we have the monkey brain. At the center of the brain, emotions, which ranks where you are in the social hierarchy. Are you the top dog? Are you the underdog? Are you just a drone worker? That's the monkey brain. And then the highest level is predicting the future. We daydream. We plan. We scheme. Animals do not. Animals have no sense of tomorrow. When it gets cold, animals hibernate. But we, when it gets cold, we plan to, take out our rubbers and take out a down jacket and make plans. Animals don't do that. Animals have no concept of the future. We do. I talk about robots in my book, but we're running out of time. Even emotional robots I talk about. But let me end on a note. As we said before, President Barack Obama wants to initiate the BRAIN project. The European Union and the United States will dump $1 billion starting this year into mapping the brain. And one day, because of Moore's law, because of the fact that computer power doubles every 18 months, the internet will become a brain net. The internet will have emotions, will have sensations and feelings on it, And one day, we will perhaps explore the universe by sending our consciousness into outer space. You know, in the movie Contact, there's a scene where Jodie Foster looks up at the night sky, looking for intelligent life, and she says to herself, if there's no intelligent life out there, what a waste. What a waste, this whole universe devoid of consciousness. Well, perhaps one day we will explore the universe as pure consciousness. And now I'll take a few questions, but let me sum up. When I was a child, I had a role model that kept me going all these decades. My role model was Albert Einstein. And my favorite Einstein story is this. When Einstein was an old man, he was tired of giving the same talk over and over and over again. So one day his chauffeur came up to him, and the chauffeur said, Professor, I'm a part-time actor. I've heard your speech so many times, I've memorized it. So why don't we switch places? I will put on a mustache. I will put on a wig. I will be the great Einstein, and you can take a rest and be my chauffeur. Well, Einstein loved the joke, so they switched places. This went along famously until one day, a mathematician in the back asked a very difficult question. And Einstein thought, oh, the game is up. But then the chauffeur said, that question is so elementary that even my chauffeur here can answer it. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll take questions from the audience. We'll take questions from the audience, and then I will sign your copy of Physics, A Future of the Mind. And so once again, let's line up, and we'll have time for a few questions, and then we'll sign your copy. By the way, once I autograph your book, you can go on eBay and sell it for money. I looked it up myself. I know exactly how much my signature is worth. So if you want to make some cash tonight, get your book signed. Yeah, let's take a few questions, and then I really have to sign books. Okay, quiet down, and we'll take a few questions. Yeah.
Yes, hi. If I have the skill to play the piano, I can mentally practice a piece while I'm driving my car and go home and play that piece. If I then have no skill playing the piano and I have this skill uploaded as a memory later, will that directly translate to dexterity and muscle memory, or is that an entirely different thing?
Well, muscle memory, the memory of somebody playing football or baseball, is a little bit harder because muscle memory, if you do a brain scan of muscle memory, you find out that it's more than just the hippocampus. It involves the brainstem and the spinal cord. And so that is going to be more difficult. What we have here is only the hippocampus. Only the hippocampus. But when you start to talk about figure skating or gymnastics, you start to look at muscle memory. Now, that will take a separate pacemaker. But right now, the immediate goal is to create a brain pacemaker for Alzheimer's. That's the short-term goal. Yeah, we have a lot of questions, so another question.
Could you give a more detailed account of your conception of consciousness? Like, it seems like there are some information theoretic considerations, but some of the levels seemed a bit like you were moving in directions in sort of orthogonal directions. So please just.
Okay, really quick. I define consciousness as the number of feedback loops necessary to create a model of yourself in space with regards to other people, and then with regards to time, that is, to see the future. That allows you to give a numerical ranking, a number associated with the number of feedback loops necessary to understand your position in space. So a thermostat would have one unit of consciousness. Reptiles understand space. That would be the lowest level of living consciousness other than a thermostat. Monkeys, going through evolution now from the back of the brain toward the front of the brain, monkeys have level 2 consciousness, and we have level 3 consciousness. I call this the space-time theory of consciousness, going from space to society, then society to simulating the future. And this also functions as a definition of intelligence. We used to think that IQ exams measure intelligence, but many people followed 30 years after they were children Many super IQ people wind up as petty criminals, as drug addicts, as marginally employed people. A more positive measurement of intelligence, I think, is level 3 consciousness, predicting the future. Take a safecracker. A safecracker may have a low IQ because he flunked out of grade school, but he can see the future of a bank robbery much better than the police. The police, he can run circles around the police because he sees the future. He runs simulations of the future much better than the police. And so he would have a much higher level of level 3 consciousness. And one day, perhaps we'll meet aliens from outer space. Maybe they'll be more intelligent than us. But what does that mean? What does it mean if you meet an alien more intelligent than a human? It means he can see the future better than us. He can see outcomes. He can daydream with more sophistication, more accuracy than we can strategize or we can plan. So this is a totally new definition of consciousness that is numerical. It is testable, reproducible, and falsifiable, which are the 3 criterion for a theory. Okay, let's move on. Let's take a few more, and then I really have to sign books. I'll be signing your book, and then you go right to eBay afterwards. Okay.
Hi, Doctor. My question for you today is, based on everything that you're telling us as far as the scientific aspect of the future, how do you see the robotics and everything that you talked about and explained affecting our humanity?
Okay. First of all, some people think that robots are going to take over, 10 years from now, and they're going to put us in zoos behind bars. They're going to throw peanuts at us and make us dance. Okay? Well, I interviewed the creator of Asimo. Asimo is the world's most advanced robot. On BBC television, I put a microphone right to the inventor of Asimo, and I asked him, how smart is Asimo? And he said, the world's smartest robot has the intelligence of a cockroach, a retarded cockroach, a lobotomized retarded cockroach. He barely can understand space. He barely understands where he is in a room. He's clumsy. He's pre-programmed like a tape recorder. In other words, Asimo is at level 1. He is a level 1 object like an insect. But even insects can navigate very quickly in a forest. So you see, we have a long ways to go. But eventually, they will become as smart as a rabbit. Eventually, they will become as smart as a dog or a cat, and then a monkey. When they become as smart as a monkey, I think we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they have murderous thoughts. Because at that point, they could turn on us. But we've got many, many decades to go before the robots take over. And I think we have plenty of time to put chips in their brains to shut them off. Okay, let's take just a few more questions, then I got to sign books. Yeah.
Dr. Kaku, I was watching your documentaries with my son the other day, and he asked me a very interesting question. He wanted to know how long or how many more years do you estimate for these abilities to be available to people? Let's say our generation, the next 30 years. What of all of these advances will we see or will be able to access? As you were mentioning in the Superman movie, there was a virtual copy of Superman's father. For example, that ability or that...
Oh, when? Well, let's try to put this in a rough chronological order. In this decade, we will have driverless cars. In the end of this decade, we'll start to tinker with internet contact lenses. In this decade, we'll have RoboDoc, that is a doctor in your wallpaper that is intelligent, that will give you medical diagnosis. We'll have RoboLawyer in your wallpaper that is almost for free and give you legal advice when you have a car accident. That's all going to happen in this decade. And then with regards to the brain pacemaker will be available for animals in this decade. In the decade after that, then we're talking about a brain pacemaker for humans, uploading simple memories into humans in the next decade after that. Then we're going to start to see a proliferation of robots in the house. Useful robots, not just a robot, but useful robots. They're not conscious, they're not self-aware, but in the next decade after that, we're going to start to see robots become perhaps as big as General Motors. Lots of little robots doing simple tasks, but not taking over by any means, okay? And then in the decade beyond that, we may have BrainNet. And that is emotions and memories sent on the internet, movies will become obsolete. Movies will be replaced by things that have sensation, that have memories, and will control things mentally. That's in the third decade, okay? But unfortunately, I have to sign books. So
Thank you very
why
much.
don't I end here? I apologize to you people on the line. I really have to sign books or my publisher's going to kill me. So line up, and I'll begin to sign your copy of The Future of the Mind. Thank you.
Find information about these programs on the literature table by the front entrance, and you can sign up for an electronic events calendar. I am very pleased to introduce to you tonight's guest. For the first time in history, the secrets of the living brain are being revealed by a battery of high-tech brain scans devised by physicists. Now what was once solely the province of science fiction has become a startling reality. Recording memories, telepathy, videotaping our dreams, mind control, avatars, and telekinesis are not only possible, they already exist. The future of the mind gives us an authoritative and compelling look at the astonishing research being done in top laboratories around the world, all based on the latest advancements in neuroscience and physics. One day we might have a smart pill that can enhance our cognition, be able to upload our brain to a computer, neuron for neuron, send thoughts and emotions around the world on a brain net, control computers and robots with our mind, push the very limits of immortality, and perhaps even send our consciousness across the universe. Dr. Kaku takes us on a grand tour of what the future might hold, giving us not only a solid sense of how the brain functions, but also how these technologies will change our daily lives. He even presents a radically new way to think about consciousness and applies it to provide It is my pleasure to welcome you to the University of Chicago and to the International House. Before we get started, I just want to outline today's program. There will be a brief introduction followed by a one-hour presentation. After our presentation, participants will have the opportunity to come up during a brief question and answer session. If you would like to do that, please make an orderly line at the microphone in the middle aisle. Remember to keep your answers brief, as we'd like to have as many participants as possible. After question and answer, we will also have a book signing. So if you purchase a book today from the Co-op Seminary, please form a line as well, and you're more than welcome to come up and have it signed. My name is Jaime Garcia, and I'm the manager of student enrichment at the Collegiate Scholars Program. The Collegiate Scholars.
Well, after such a great introduction, I can't wait to hear the speaker myself. I have a confession to make. New York Magazine voted me as one of the 100 smartest people. However, in all fairness, I have to admit that Madonna also made that same list. And next year, they tell me that Lady Gaga is going to push me off the list entirely. Now, I'm a physicist. And you may say, well, what does a physicist do anyway? How does it differ from chemistry? Well, we physicists, we invented the transistor. We invented the laser. We constructed the internet. We wrote the World Wide Web. And also, along the way, we invented television. We invented radio, microwaves, radar. We created the space program. We created the GPS system, and we love to make predictions. When we helped to build the internet, one physicist predicted that the internet would become a forum of high culture, high art, and high society. Well, today we know that 5% of the internet is pornography. But that's because teenage boys.
This program is a 3-year program that aims to prepare talented Chicago public school students for admission and success at the nation's top universities. CSP is shaped around a core curriculum of humanities, social science, math, and science courses. All courses taught during the summer months by University of Chicago faculty and PhD candidates. In addition, CSP offers enrichment activities geared toward college readiness, cultural awareness, and civic engagement during the academic year. Activities much like tonight's event. This lecture is also brought to you by the International House Global Voices Performing Arts and Lecture Series. International House was founded in 1932 through a gift of John D. Rockefeller Jr. as a coeducational residence and program center for students from around the world and the citizens of Chicago. Whether it's a world music or dance performance, lecture, conference, or film festival, International House presents public programming that advances cross-cultural understanding and opportunities for civic discourse on community, national, and world affairs. The Global Voices Author Night Series is a popular public book series organized as a collaborative project with International House and the Seminary Co-op bookstores. Tonight's program is also co-sponsored with the Office of Civic Engagement's Collegiate Scholars Program. I hope all of you will return to International House throughout the coming months and years to attend our public lecture series and performances. You can find fresh insight into mental illness, artificial intelligence, and alien consciousness. Dr. Kaku's deep understanding of modern science and keen eye for future developments. The future of the mind is a scientific tour de force, an extraordinary, mind-boggling exploration of the frontiers in neuroscience. And Future of the Mind just hit number 6 on Amazon, so definitely want to make sure we mention that. So it's a great accomplishment. Dr. Michio Kaku is the co-creator of string theory, a branch of string theory. He received a BS summa cum laude from Harvard University in 1968, where he came first in his physics class. He went on to the Berkeley Radiation Laboratory at the University of California, Berkeley, and received a PhD in 1972. In 1973, he held a lectureship at Princeton University. He is the author of several scholarly PhD-level textbooks and has had more than 70 articles published in physics journals covering topics such as superstring theory, supergravity, supersymmetry, and hadronic physics. Just recently, New York Magazine named him one of the 100 smartest people in New York. So without further ado, if you'd please help me welcome our tonight's guest, Dr. Michio Kaku.